"I don't think I understand what you mean by that last part anyway," she said. As I had been all day, I was expecting to hear fear in her voice, but all there was curiosity. When I looked back into her eyes, they were thoughtful, and I realized she wanted to know the truth as much as I wanted to tell it to her. It gave me the strength to continue. "How do I explain? And without frightening you again?" I sifted through several possible explanations, most of them involving food. I wondered idly if that would upset her. My thoughts were interrupted when I felt her squeeze my hand. I didn't remember having put it back in hers, but I was happy to feel her touch again. "That's amazingly pleasant, the warmth," I sighed, wishing she could understand just how spectacular it really was for me. Over the years, I'd only ever had physical contact with my family, and of course all of their skin felt exactly like mine. Before Bella, I hadn't felt warmth in so many decades, I'd almost forgotten what it was like. I marveled for another brief moment over the pleasure of her touch, then forced myself to focus again. Deciding the food analogy was really the only way to explain it to a human, I sighed and tried to phrase my words carefully. "You know how everyone enjoys different flavors? Some people love chocolate ice cream, others prefer strawberry." She nodded, though there was a hint of concern on her face, probably seeing where I was going with it. "Sorry about the food analogy, couldn't think of another way to explain." She smiled at me, and it was obviously forced, so I smiled back at her apologetically. There was no turning back now, and we both knew it. "You see, every person smells different, has a different essence. If you locked an alcoholic in a room full of stale beer, he'd gladly drink it. But he could resist, if he wished to, if he were a recovering alcoholic. Now let's say you placed in that room a glass of 100-year-old brandy, the rarest, finest cognac, and he filled the room with its warm aroma. Oh, do you think he would fare then?" She stared at me, trying to understand the temptation I was apparently failing miserably at explaining. I watched her expression shift from confused, to thoughtful, to somewhat accepting, then back to confused. Clearly she'd never been tempted beyond what she could tolerate, never given in and eaten forbidden food. Hadn't every child stolen a cookie from the jar at some point? "Maybe that's not the right comparison," I said, desperate to make her understand. "Maybe it would be too easy to turn down the brandy. Perhaps I should have made our alcoholic a heroin addict instead." Finally it all seemed to click as I saw a brief flicker of fear in her eyes, which she quickly replaced with amusement. "Amazing me as always," she made a joke. "So what you're saying it, I'm your brand of heroin." I smiled, showing her how much I appreciated her attempt to keep things light, but also wanting her to know that she was more right than perhaps she had realized. "Yes, you are exactly my brand of heroin." Without missing a beat, she asked, "Does that happen often?" I thought for a moment, wondering how best to answer. I wanted her to know the danger and severity of the situation she'd found herself in, but I'd frightened her so much already. I struggled with the right way to say it. Maybe if it wasn't about us directly. "I spoke to my brothers about it. To Jasper, every one of you is much the same. He's the most recent to join our family. It's a struggle for him to abstain at all. He hasn't had time to grow sensitive to the differences in smell, in flavor." Though I hadn't been looking directly at her, I was fairly sure I saw her flinch from the corner of my eye. I looked swiftly back at her, wishing there was an easier way, but needing her to understand why it was so much harder to control myself around her. She was so different from the rest of them, those humans I walked around with every day, barely a burn in my throat at all compared to her. My Bella and her heavenly set, too delicious to resist but too precious to destroy. "Sorry," I apologized. "I don't mind. Please don't worry about offending me, or frightening me, or whichever. That's just the way you think. I can understand, or I can try to at least. Just explain however you can." Relieved by her determination to understand, I summoned the strength to continue. "So Jasper wasn't sure if he'd ever come across someone who was as..." I trailed off. This was the hardest part. Explaining the intense desire without upsetting her further. finding the right adjective. Delectable. Luscious. Exquisite. Inviting. The venom started to flow again, and I cursed myself for letting it get that far. I quickly continued my explanation, hoping she wouldn't notice the change in my voice. Appealing as you are to me. Which makes me think not, I finished conclusively, forcing back the thirst. Emmett has been on the wagon loner, so to speak, and he understood what I meant. He says twice, for him, one stronger than the other. And for you? Never. That was it. That was what I needed her to understand. There had never in my almost 100 years, been anyone who tempted me the way she does. The smartest thing for both of us would be for me to leave, yet neither one of us seemed able to accept that option. Still, it was only fair that she understand completely. I've never pushed my resistance to the extreme like this. I couldn't truly be sure how long I could hold on. Then I remembered the way she'd leaned into me earlier without a trace of fear, and the vow I'd silently made to keep her safe, to let her be close to me without giving her a reason to be afraid. I forced another deep, intoxicating breath, and let the burn strengthen my resolve. I was not going to allow the monster within to take such a precious gift from the man who so desperately wanted nothing more than to love her. Lost in my thoughts, I almost didn't hear her when she spoke again. "What did Emma do?" she asked, and instantly I went rigid. My hand made a fist inside hers, and no amount of her warmth and comfort could relax it. I wasn't going to answer her, and she knew it. Nothing could make me form those words. "I guess I know," she said, trailing off sadly. There was no reason for it, she wasn't accusing or condemning him, but still I felt the urge to defend my brother. Even the strongest of us fall off the wagon, don't we? "What are you asking?" "My permission?" she said in the harshest tone I'd ever heard her take. I was so stunned, I'm not sure I even understood what she was asking. Then in a completely different tone, she added, "I mean, is there no hope, then?" "No, no," I yelled, frightening even myself because in that instant I knew what she'd thought, and it horrified me. Was she really sitting beside me, calm and rational, but secretly wondering when the vampire would attack? Could she really care about me so much that she was willing to give her life to be with me? Though she was talking about what she basically assumed was her imminent death, her voice was gentle and kind, like she was comforting me. It was filled with such sadness that I was completely overcome. I wanted to hold her and tell her everything would be fine. Nothing was going to make me do to her what Emmett had done to those humans. It wasn't the same. Couldn't she see it wasn't the same? Of course there's hope. I mean, of course I won't. It was then I realized that she couldn't possibly know the absolute conviction of the vow I'd made to myself earlier, the vow that was getting me through this ordeal. I wanted to make her understand that although nothing could ever dilute the potency of her blood, my love for her was making every second we spent together more bearable. Her life had been in danger many times. But now the only thing raging through me was the strength of what I felt for her. My love would save her life, again and again. "It's different for us," I tried pitifully to explain. "Emmett." These were strangers he happened across. It was a long time ago, and he wasn't as practiced, as careful, as he is now. I stared at her, hoping she could see the difference. "So if we'd met in a dark alley or something," she said hesitantly. It took everything I had not to jump up in the middle of that class full of children, and I stopped, wondering if that was too much truth for her. Yet I'd promised her total honesty, so I continued, trying not to say anything too offensive. "When you walked past me, I could have ruined everything Carlisle has built for us, right then and there. If I hadn't been denying my thirst for the last, too many years, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself." I felt the disgust wash across my face, remembering that first dark day, when I had almost taken the life of the most innocent, the most compassionate of humans. I never would have known just how profane a sin I'd committed. I've never have felt this impossibly strong love for the girl who now sat across from me, the unworthy vampire. "You must have, though I was possessed," I said, finally forcing myself to see that horrific day through her eyes. I couldn't understand why. How you could hate me so quickly. To me, it was like you were some kind of demon, summoned straight from my own personal hell to ruin me. The fragrance coming off your skin. I thought it would make me deranged that first day. In that 1 hour, I thought of 100 different ways to lure you from the room with me, to get you alone. And I fought them each back, thinking of my family, what I could do to them. I had to run out, to get away before I could speak the words that would make you follow.